So with this week's episode of One Piece, definitely a lot of setup going into it, a lot of introductions, and I felt as though with this episode it was finally making things move, not at the greatest pace of all time or anything like that, but it definitely made things move. Now for starters, with the beginning of the episode where Frankie kind of saw Luffy off while Luffy went into the tournament and he didn't, it kind of made me think, like, what happened with Frankie? Why didn't he join? I know he previously said, I don't want the Mera fruit. I don't want to lose my ability to swim or whatever. But I didn't think that would stop him from entering the tournament and supporting Luffy. And like, yeah, if he wins, okay, he could just give the Mera fruit to Luffy or whoever Luffy wants the fruit to be given to or whatever. So that kind of made me a little bit curious. Like, I thought Frankie would be interested in throwing down and going in. So I was a little bit bummed that we didn't get to have Frankie go in. But I guess there's also other plans that they have to, achieve on the island. So that might have stopped him as well from joining in on the battles and going in and whatnot. Now, in this episode, I feel as though coming from a manga reader perspective, knowing what I know, it made things a little bit more exciting and interesting for me, because if you come into the anime, you see a lot of these characters being introduced, the Sai, the Hoppo Navy, Donchin Zhao, a lot of these characters, Cavendish, you don't know who they are, so it's just all this info being thrown at you. And I remember in the manga, I was a little bit like, why? I don't know any of these people. Where the fuck is all this information being thrown at once? But coming in, knowing what I know about these characters, I know which ones will be relevant, which ones won't. It makes it a little bit more exciting. So I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what I saw in the manga. I'm excited to see this character's first introduction. So if you're an anime-only viewer, it might not have been exciting, but I promise you that some of these characters that were introduced, you might have a good time with, and they are going to be epic, and they're going to get the spotlight, so it's not like Oda's just throwing all this irrelevant shit at you. Some of these characters will be very prevalent, not only for the tournament, but other stuff to come, so you don't got to be bummed out about that. I felt as though the first half of the episode was definitely a lot slower than the second half. The first half, you got Frankie talking with the toy soldier, getting a little more info on the toy soldier, and while that was kind of, necessary, like, oh, okay, we're getting something with this toy soldier, it still at the same time is kind of like, didn't really need it. And then the whole Violet and Sanji part, while I worked last week, in this week's episode, it was kind of like, yeah, you're dragging this on a little bit, as far as, like, there was a scene when Sanji's just standing there, and we're looking at Sanji for, like, 5 seconds with a clueless face or whatever. So, they drag things on the first half. The second half, things go in full motion with the tournament. Luffy kicks someone's ass, which is awesome, and that also kind of contributes to the arc overall, because now people are starting to look at this competitor, Lucy, like, yo, he just flipped this dude over like nothing. Who is this person? And that's going to give him somewhat of a reputation, even though it was accidental. So it's definitely a somewhat important part, because people are going to start looking more closely into him. How did he flip this guy like it was nothing? He did him in like he was, dog shit. And that's just somewhat important. So that was another good setup in that aspect. And then just getting introduced to some of these characters. You got the Donchin Zhao character. You got Cavendish. I wish they wouldn't have shouted out a lot of these other characters. Like, there were some characters that I was really excited to see, and they have, like, you only see, like, the bottom part of them, and then the top half is like shadowed out. I was like, a little bit bummed. Now, another important thing is you get to see Bellamy in this episode, and apparently he wasn't killed off. Now, seeing this in the anime, I'm obviously not that, I'm not surprised. I saw that in the manga or whatever, and it makes you wonder, what is his overall purpose? Why would Oda bring him back into the fold when we previously, up until this point, thought motherfucker was dead, he was killed off. Doflamingo had him kill himself. So what is his greater purpose? That also gets installed in there and gets set up. And that's what this episode mainly did. It did a lot of big setups. You got Luffy now, he's in that little armored suit or whatever. You got this Cavendish guy, he's trying to go off on Lucy. And a lot of things are just coming in to the fold little by little. And this episode, I felt as though while the first half was slow, second half made up for it, because it gave you a lot of information and a lot of important stuff for the arc, setting things up. So overall, I got to give this one definitely a 7 out of 10. It brought in some characters, brought back Bellamy, makes you think what the fuck's up with that, set up the arena, set up the matches, and I'm just overall like pretty hype about it, because some of these characters are going to be pretty hype. At first, I'll tell you right now, when I read the manga, some of these shit's like, I don't give a fuck about Donchin Zhao, but once you watch it, you're going to be like, Donchin Zhao for the motherfucking win. I'm telling you, people, just watch, wait and see, alright? There's some good setup, trust me, people. But let me know what you think of the episode. First of all, what do you think is Bellamy's reason for being back in the manga? What Oda has plans for him? Also, what do you think about some of the characters most excited? If you're an anime-only viewer, which one you think looks the most badass? If you're a manga reader, which one you're most excited to see? Were you disappointed with any of the characters being shadowed out from the actual picture? I was pretty just overall happy. I wish they would have added a little bit more of these characters that were shadowed out. I was kind of like, also, I thought it would have been badass as a motherfucker if Frankie would have been in there, but I guess at the end of the day, Frankie wouldn't want to have to fight Luffy anyway, because, at some given point, they probably would have had to fought for the finals, so maybe that's why Frankie didn't want to get in. Another good reason there as well. Slow start, pretty good middle to the end, and just overall very solid setup. So that's all I have for this review. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Thumbs up for this tournament, because right now we're going in, and I promise you people there will be some epic matches. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always people, have an awesome day.